It's one of the greatest treats I have on this show. Being a kid who would watch movies on Saturdays and whenever they played in out of the New York market, and I would have a lot of fun with that. And I would see people who made an impression upon me for their acting skills and their grace and their beauty and their versatility. And I am interviewing one of these people tonight. Her name is Lisa Janti. She was known in the acting world as Lisa Montell, numerous TV shows and films, a fantastically long career, a great amount of service in the humanitarian vein, and just a wonderful life, and she keeps on going. Lisa, I am honored. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tony.
And I wanted to ask you, where were you born and how did you come? I understand you were born in Poland and you came to the U.S. How did that all come about?
Yeah, well, yes. I was born in Warsaw, in Poland. And my father, who traveled around the world in his business dealings and spent a great deal of time in the United States, was very aware of Hitler and the impending catastrophe. As this was back in the late 1930s. And he determined to get us out of Poland, and he did. Just 3 months before Hitler invaded, we came to the United States. So that's how I arrived here, and we settled in New York at that time.
Now, you came to New York, and later did you go to Florida?
Yeah, I've been a lot of places. When we lived in New York, which was first in Manhattan, right across from Central Park, we had a wonderful apartment that was just, right there with the park.
Right, yes, gorgeous.
And we had a summer home a winter home in Florida, in Fort Pierce, which is, down near closer to Miami. And so every winter we would, or most winters anyway, we would travel down there. We had an orange grove and a home. And eventually, because of his business dealings, we actually moved down to Florida for a while. My father was in Peru, where he was involved in business, and that's how I spent about a year and a half or so living in Florida.
And where did you graduate high school? Was it Florida?
Yeah, actually there. Now, in New York, I went to two of the most fabulous high schools in the world. This was going way back in the 40s, and one was the High School of Music and Art, where I was an art major, and I loved that. It was just an incredible high school. And while I was there, a new high school opened up, the High School of Performing Arts. And that intrigued me even more, so I auditioned for that and got in as a drama major. So I attended those two high schools in New York before we had to move. So my last year I spent in Florida as a high school student and graduated from, I think St. Lucie High School in Fort Pierce.
It's, so you certainly did live in a lot of places. Now, I understand, I was going to ask you how you got to Hollywood, but somehow there was a movie, Daughter of the Sun God, that was held up in release. And what was the exact sequence of events there that got you to Hollywood? And where did Daughter of the Sun God fit in with that whole train of events?
I'll tell you right away, but I'm just curious. Did you ever get to see the movie?
No, I tried to look it up and I tried to find it. I couldn't.
Yeah, they did finally release it, and so there are copies of it around.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, as I said, my father had business interests in Peru, and they eventually made it necessary for us to move there. So, excuse me one second.
Sure.
So, I was attending the University of Miami at that time, and my father said traveling is more important. And he was a great believer in people being able to travel and meet different cultures, different people, and so on. So he said, this will be the better education for you. So off we all went to live in Lima, Peru. And while I was there, I attended university and took various art courses and so on. But there was a group of Americans who were not professional actors by any means. They were business people, educators, just whatever. And they had formed the Lima Drama Workshop or something like that to put on English-speaking theater. And so the moment I heard about that, I immediately went there and joined them. And so I played in several theater productions in Lima. And apparently at one of them, there was a producer and people involved in who had come to Lima to make a movie, which ended up being Daughter of the Sun God. And they brought the actor who was to play the lead, Bill Holmes, was, I believe, the heir to the Fleischman East fortune, and they were sort of funding the whole project. And they were looking for a local actor or actress to play the lead in the female lead. So when they saw me, they asked to audition me, and they did, and we did a screen test, and I got the part. So that's how I got the female lead in that movie.
I understand. And how did your path actually get you into Hollywood from there?
Okay, so we made the movie, which was fun and terrifying in many ways. I almost got killed a few times.
Huh.
It was really quite an extraordinary event. But apparently, even though the movie was not well received, there was a lot of interest in me because people thought I had real promise and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was not interested in leaving Peru at that time, having a wonderful life there. Made a few more local films and various projects in Peru. But then, unfortunately, my father died.
Mm.
And so, my mother and I had to decide what to do. And I thought, well, they were, really after me to come to Hollywood, which is very nice. Most people have to struggle to get there. They were, asking me. So I said I really would like to give it a chance. And my mother was wonderful, and she said, look, just don't be disappointed if nothing happens, but if you want to give it a try, I'll support you in every way, and off we went. So we came to Hollywood, and because of the people who had made Daughter of the Sun God, the producer, and others, they introduced me. And at that time, I think it was called MCI, one of the largest agencies,
Mm-hmm.
film agencies, immediately took me on and started, having me go to various interviews. And I just started working. And eventually, though, I didn't really enjoy, or I wasn't comfortable being with that organization, and I ended up with the Hammelberg Agency, who were primarily doing work for Gene Autry.
Ah.
And that's how I ended up doing all kinds of westerns. Up to that time, I was playing Europeans and,
Well, I was...
and so on. But then I ended up doing all these westerns, and I started doing all kinds of Indian roles and Mexican roles and wonderful ethnic roles. I had more fun.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, in your roles, I mean, they were very athletic. One of my favorites is She Gods of Shark Reef. I mean, you're wrestling with sharks. Then other movies, you're running and you're falling off horses. I mean, and you didn't have a stunt lady. You did this all yourself. And was it because you were a very good athlete and very adept at things?
Yes, and I didn't know any better. But actually, I was a good swimmer. I always loved swimming, and I was loved horseback riding, so I did that well. So there was no reason not to do it, and a lot of the roles that I got, I think, connected with that, that I was able to do so many things. And somebody once said you should be, the perils of Montell. So, I had quite an adventurous time, I think, in Hollywood.
It's certainly amazing. Now, two people you work with whose careers I really liked and followed. You worked with Virginia Mayo in Pearl of the South Pacific, and you worked with Dean Martin in 10,000 Bedrooms. Could you give me your recollections of both Dean and Virginia? Yeah,
well, she was, of course, really gorgeous. Very, very lovely. And, it's interesting. I don't know about other people's experiences, but in my case, most of it was on a very work-like business level. It's not like we socialized that much. Mm-hmm. So I can't say I really got to know her personally that much. But working with her was wonderful, and Alan Dwan, who was the director, was absolutely a dear, dear man. Yes, that's right. He did that movie and Escape to Burma at RKO. And and that was one of those. I think that was maybe the first one where I played a native, like Polynesian, Hawaiian, whatever, island girl, and went on to do quite a few of those.
And what is your ethnic background, just so we can have that on the record?
Okay, but just before we go into that, you asked me about Dean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, let's complete the previous question.
Yeah, and She Gods of Shark Reef. So anyway, She Gods took me to Hawaii, and that was another of those wonderful, where I made two movies where I played Native girls.
Right.
What was it? It ended up being Naked Paradise, and then the She Gods of Shark Reef. And absolutely wonderful getting to go to Hawaii. That was part of the really joy of doing these films. So I got to travel so much and experience places I might not have gone to otherwise. And so that was another whole adventure we can talk about if you like.
Sure.
Excuse me. I may be coughing a little bit. Sorry about that.
That's perfectly okay.
As far as Dean Martin, he was the funniest. He was just, I only knew him from when he used to do films with Dean and, what was it?
Jerry Lewis?
Jerry Lewis. And Jerry Lewis was the funny one, and like Dean was the straight guy. Well, Dean was, in real life, Dean was the crack-up, and Jerry was more the serious guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Dean Martin was funny. He's just constantly joking. Not sure how sober he was a good deal of the time, but it didn't matter. He was absolutely wonderful. And that whole movie was just a lot of fun to make, yeah.
And
so you wanted to know what my background is?
Yeah, because you played Indian women and island women and exotic women. What is your actual background?
So it's a mix of Polish, Russian, and Tatar. So Tatar is a little bit, more Asian, and so I get those high cheekbones. And if I'm in my normal skin, I'm rather pale and probably look very European, if nothing else. But put some dark makeup on me and the right hair and sarong or whatever, and I changed, very quickly. They used to call me, or at least somebody did, and wrote an article, Starlet of 1,000 Faces, because I did so many of these ethnic roles, just all kinds,
right?
Just about everything you can imagine. And all it had to do was the whatever costume or hairdo or, makeup was necessary, and I seemed to transform like any good chameleon.
Now, the Corman movies, Thunder Over Hawaii and She Gods of Shark Reef,
Right.
you were those movies made in sequence? Were you on Hawaii for a while doing those roles?
What we did is we did some of the underwater sequences off of Catalina, California, because the water was very clear and very easy to work there.
Sure.
So we spent quite a bit of time there. Then we went to Hawaii and we did Thunder Over Hawaii, which was also called Naked Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
It came out under both titles at different times. And we did that one first, and they left, and then we did She Gods of Shark Reef. So altogether, I was there probably a couple of months. It was, just one of the most delightful experiences. Hawaii, as you must know, is gorgeous, and it was a splendid, splendid experience.
Boy, that's wonderful. And then, at the peak of your career, you leave acting. Can you tell us about that and what caused you to, quote-unquote, separate from service?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have always been interested in so many things, and acting was one of them, but not the only thing.
I understand.
And so I wasn't that committed to just being an actress. When my father died, because of some very unfortunate circumstances, we didn't get the kind of money we should have gotten, and so my mother and I had to, think carefully about what we were going to do, and I realized I needed to go to work. And when films came my way, and the door opened, I was more than delighted to take that opportunity because, frankly, I didn't know what else I could do. I was very young and totally, inexperienced. And so that was a true godsend, that I was given that opportunity, that wonderful chance to work in such a fun,
wonderful
lucrative way.
Yeah.
So that was that. But in other words, what I'm saying is that it wasn't the only great passion of my life. And different things came together, how they sometimes do in life. I became a member of the Baha'i faith and became very, very committed and involved in doing work that I felt was serious and very important and necessary, and started doing a lot of volunteer work in the community with having to do with underprivileged children and lots of other things. So that became a great interest of mine, and fighting injustice and working against racial prejudice and all of these things. So that really became a very important thing for me. Also, it was in the period where films were changing and were beginning to take on much more of a overt sexual nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was in films, they were still very, I would say, modest in various ways, but it was changing, and I was not comfortable with that, the so-called overt,
right.
explicit sexuality. And then my agent died. He was someone who I had great confidence in and felt very comfortable working with. So all these factors and others, personal things that happened in my life, came together, and when the door opened for me to get involved in the Head Start program, to become a teacher in that program, I went for it. I went from earning, $2,000 to $3,000 a day to earning $500 a month. How about that?
How about that?
That's a big, big change. But for me, it was an important change. And anyway, I felt that was something I was moved, very motivated to do.
Now, when you were teaching in Head Start, did anybody recognize you as Lisa Montell, the actress, or were you Mrs. Janti?
It's by the way, Tony, it's like Jaja. It's Janti.
Janti.
Yes. No, nobody recognized me, and I never talked about it. I never brought it up because it was like part of my past and had nothing to do with the work I was doing then. And remember, when I was in films, most of the time I was in dark makeup and speaking with an accent and wearing costumes, of various ethnic kinds, and looked quite different from, my usual self. So, no, and I didn't bring it up. So very few people really knew that I had even been in films.
That's a marvelous story. I understand there was a gentleman by the name of Howard Hughes who took an interest in you along the way. Is that a true statement? And can you elucidate us on that?
Yeah. Well, that was one of several, what you might say, opportunities that I definitely did not take. That came my way, and when I did the two films at RKO, Escape to Burma and Pearl of the South Pacific, Howard Hughes at that time owned the studio. Mm-hmm. That was before it became Desilu. And, when Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz took over. So when I made Escape to Burma, which was a very small role. I had a bigger role in the Pearl of the South Pacific. But anyway, there were, of course, the publicity photos, and he saw the film, and apparently took a real interest in me, and made clear to my agent that he wanted to put me under contract, personal contract. And so my agent, I remember, called and said, don't go anywhere, don't do anything, just stand by, a meeting is being set up for you with him. And I remember I had to wait 3 days before finally, the call came to have a meeting. And I had such mixed feelings about it, Tony. On the one hand, I realized it was a huge opportunity in one way, financially, which my mother and I were struggling a little bit at that time.
Sure.
Even though I was earning good money, I wasn't working constantly. You have spells in between your
right, and it was before residuals. I understand.
And so the idea of having large, income coming in and so on, and steady income was certainly, very desirable. And the other thing is that you assumed he would promote my career and all of that. But on the other hand, I was not at all sure about the personal aspect of it and what that might entail.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that he was, had been involved with a lot of other starlets, and I really, really, really was not comfortable with the idea of that. So I remember thinking, okay, if he's really interested in me as an actress, then that's one thing. But if it's something else than that, then, I'm not going to, respond. So I remember dressing very demurely, like a schoolgirl practically, with a little shirt and, skirt, and very, very, very modest, very demure. And when we finally met at this artist studio on Sunset Boulevard, I remember, he was kind of scary looking. When he came out, I just saw, a few photographs of him prior to that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him as being quite tall. I don't know if, because I'm not sure how he really was, but to me he looked tall. And I don't know if he had earplugs or something, but there seemed to be like a wire coming out of his ear. And he really looked very strange. And anyway, when we started talking, I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to let him know what I really like, what I'm really, and things that interest me, which were opera and Russian literature, Sufi poetry. And I thought, okay, he's either going to go for it or not, and of course he didn't.
Wow. It's
and
an unbelievable story.
I expect him to, and I really didn't want him to. But I thought that was a nice way of kind of getting out of it all, just to...
It's a marvelous story. And Lisa, I hate to tell you, I'm really enjoying this, and we're going to have you back. We are out of time, and I am so pleased to have had this chat with you, and there's a ton of other things we can talk about if you would be so kind to come back again. And I know it's the early evening in California, so have a great night, and we will be in touch, and I hope to have this interview produced so I can send it to you. And please have a great night, a great rest of the summer, and we will talk again.
Okay, Tony. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that was Lisa Janti. So as Jaja, Lisa Montell Janti. We are going to be coming right back to close the show. And it's been a wild show, and it's been a whole lot of fun to do. We'll see you in a moment. It's not the pale moon that excites me, that thrills and